returning to 10, your news leader. 10 News Conference with Gene Valicenti continues right now.
Welcome back to 10 News Conference. Joining me now is Stephen Corvi. He's the Republican running in Rhode Island's 2nd Congressional District, hoping to unseat Congressman Seth Magazine to the Democrat in November. Stephen, thanks for coming in. You and I were just chatting. You're a college professor. You've written several books, and your specialty is British and American military history. Well suited for politics, I guess. You got a war on your hands?
Yeah, I believe I do.
You're the underdog going in, obviously.
Yes. Well, first of all, thank you for having me, Gene.
Yeah, okay.
Yes, most definitely. And I think what's interesting is that my campaign policies is really basic on 3 things: merit, equality, and transparency. And I think those are 3 things that we have not seen in politics in the American landscape for over 50 years. Oh. People need to be judged on merit. I think equality stands for itself, and transparency is the biggest one. And it has to be part of it. Media has to point out our flaws on both sides of the floor and make us accountable.
Okay, well, listen, Seth Magazine debated about a half a dozen Democrats last time around. I was the moderator, so how do you fault him on transparency? He showed up. None of those Democrats are taking him on again. With those 3 characters you just mentioned, doesn't he possess them?
Well, without getting into personal jibes, which that I think is beyond, it's the record. He is a party animal. He represents the Democratic Party more than he represents the people of Rhode Island and the people of the United States. The other thing for merit, he voted on very few bills in his 2 years as Congress. I mean, you have to show up and do your job. Yeah. That's the first one. And second of all, when he was the state treasurer, he had some incongruities in his abilities as state treasurer, as conflict of interest. It was one of the big ones. And these are issues that need to be transparent. The voters need to see them and see who and what you stand for. My power is I have empathy. I'm here for the people. At the end of the day, I am responsible to the people of Rhode Island. They're my boss. Right. Not party donors, not big political bosses, not even the Republican Party. You're my boss, and at the end of the day, the people of the United States are.
Okay, so you're saying he's a party. He's with the party no matter what.
He's a career politician.
On his voting record, though, I mean, he showed up and voted. He's only been there a couple of years. So did you count the votes?
Yes, I did.
He has a bigger than others absentee rate?
Yes, he does. He does. You can see it. I mean, fact check that one if you want. I think it's almost 53 times that he missed. And he even mentioned that, he had had recently had a child, and, again, there's some empathy to it, and that's great. But again, the flight from Providence to Washington is pretty quick, especially if you're a congressman. You can go and do your job and be back in the next day. And I've done it myself. When I was a PhD student and working, I used to have to bring my son. I'd have to deal with daycare issues, but I did the job. At the end of the day, I will do my job, and I will be responsible to the voters of this state.
Okay, if you get there, if you prevail, which is a heavy lift, you could see that. He had a half a dozen Democrats, none of them were running against him. Yeah. This time around, but you've taken it on. Somebody has to, I guess, go up for the party. Now, you're running as a Republican, not an independent, so aren't you a party animal too?
No. I am a moderate Republican. I'm at the top of the ticket, of course, is Donald Trump, and of course I'm responsible, but my point is...
Are you voting for Trump? Let's get that out of the way. Are you Trump loyalist?
Yeah, I have to. I have to. Yeah, I mean, I have to, Gene, because if you think about it, what's the alternative? I mean, I'm sorry. I mean, I just don't have a lot of confidence in Kamala Harris as a candidate.
So you're with Trump, and you say, but you're
not 100%.
Not a party loyalist. You're not.
No, I'm not a party loyalist. And the other thing I think is important is that I believe in some of the things that Trump says. You know what? I like the message, but I don't like the way it's delivered. And I have no power over that. So I am going to form my own political campaign on my own beliefs. I'm not going to let someone else do it. And the most important thing is, if I get this job, these people will be able to talk to me, I'll be empathetic, and I will think every time I sign my name on a bill or I do anything in legislation, I will be thinking of these people. And the first thing I want to do is make it illegal for the United States government to borrow from Social Security. I think that is the main problem in this country. It's one of the top issues of economy, and people ignore it on both sides of the aisle. Yeah. So and if we do that, we will solve a lot of economic problems, and it will lead to healthcare issues. Because you know, Gene, the top of the line of economy issues in this state, in this country, are Social Security, healthcare, and of course the service of the debt. Of the debt. It's what, $38 trillion?
Why not run as an independent? Because Republicans and Democrats, he's going to go after you and say, oh, my Republican opponent wants to cut Social Security. All the Republicans do. Why not run as an independent?
Well, I think the
It
problem...
sounds like you sound like more of an independent to me.
Yeah, it is. No, I agree, and it's a good point. But the problem is that without party affiliation, it's an independence caucus with the Democrats in the state, generally speaking. So the Republicans are closer to what I want as a message. But again, I want to appeal to the people. And I think that appealing to the people, like the Social Security issue I just brought up, that's one of the big ones. That is a bipartisan issue. That solution that I have, I think, is good because it's not cutting or not cutting Social Security. We're not adding to Social Security. I'm not saying that. We have to stop borrowing. We have to think of Social Security as a giant equity. If it's worth less and less because we're borrowing against it, then it really doesn't matter if you're cutting it or adding to it, because at the end of the day, what you're doing is you're betting on the money that's coming in as Social Security tax, which belongs to the people of the United States, not the government.
Okay, Donald Trump says no tax on Social Security. Would you go along with him on that?
Yes, I agree with that. I totally agree with that.
All right, Donald Trump says no tax on overtime. He said that just yesterday.
I agree, and no taxes on service industry tips. I worked as a bartender, and I get it. And tax the check that they're paid for, and don't tax their tips. We need to instill policies that are going to grow the economy, not impede it.
All right. If you get in, there'll be some heavy lifts for you. First, the war in Ukraine. Maybe we're poised to allow Zelensky to use Western-supplied missiles deep in Russia. And Putin just the other day said that's a game changer. You're at war with me then. What would you advise?
Oh, this is so great that you asked
You're a military historian.
I know the answer. That's so funny you said that. First of all, the problem with Ukraine, and people have asked this before, we need to look at Ukraine as a general Eastern European problem. We need to go back to the Russo-Finnish War of 1939 and 40. Finland is involved now that they're a part of NATO. The Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, all the Baltic states, all these countries need to be put pressure on Russia. What we need to do is have Zelensky and Putin come to the table with a united European front so they understand that the consequences of Eastern Europe and Ukraine, the territories, need to be solved. Because Ukraine and Russia have been at each other's throats for hundreds of years. And you studied the Napoleonic Wars, you know that the Ukrainian Cossacks took the side of Napoleon against their own Russian government. And this was 200 years ago. So there's always that sense of independence in Ukraine. We need to foster that, but we also need to placate to some degree the concerns of Russia. Russia's concerned that if they lose it, it'll be like the United States losing part of Maine to Canada. Okay,
Donald Trump hasn't come out with his plan, but he says I'll sign on day one. And some are speculating that would include giving Russia whatever it's grabbed, you get to keep 20%, and guarantees that Ukraine will never be in NATO. Would you go along with that?
I agree with one thing. Ukraine should never be in NATO, because with that, you are precipitating a series of events that goes back 300 years that's threatening Russian sovereignty.
So isn't that our fault for pushing
NATO
on Ukraine?
Yes, as a matter of fact, Kamala Harris was the one who encouraged and went over on the mission and encouraged them to join NATO. So if you could say this, it was a casus belli, or the precipitating event that led to the invasion of Ukraine in 2022.
Does Putin get to keep whatever he grabbed?
Nah, see, here's the key. Here's the key with that. I'm glad you asked this one, Gene. The key is that you have to negotiate. Russians negotiate. If you know the history and you know how to deal with them, you negotiate. You don't, if they want 20%, you go for 10. You go in there with a set of negotiations. The good thing about Russia is they respect strength. You need to go in there and say, look, we understand your concerns, but we also have to understand the concerns of Eastern Europe, Finland, Poland, the Baltic states, and even Crimea. So, what is your guarantee to us that you're not going to invade another European country such as Poland, the Baltic states, or Russia? And you have a bad track record because you have invaded those countries in the past. And you put Putin on the defensive, so then he has to say, well, okay, I'll give you this. It's the art of negotiation.
Just quickly on Gaza, that's another tangle that we're involved in. What would you tell Israel? Go in and turn it into a parking lot, or no, you got to back off and give it up at this point?
No, neither one. The problem with Israel is that there's a profound misunderstanding of Israel. We have to go back to the Sykes-Picot Treaty and the Balfour Declaration and how Israel was formed in 1947 and then the end of the Treaty of Versailles in World War I. All that comes together was always a solution with a Palestinian state. What we need to do is create an environment in the Middle East where Palestine has something to lose. Right now, they have Hamas, the terrorists, and there's nothing to lose. If they can increase the standard of living over a period of time, we can create an economic symbiotic relationship between Israel and Palestine, where as Palestine does better, Israel does better. And the two nations that need to be involved in that essentially are Egypt and Saudi Arabia.
All right. You know, last time around, Seth Magazine had Alan Fung, a formidable challenger. You're lesser known. I don't know if you have as much money as Alan Fung has. Why are you doing this?
I'm
You know
doing-
that's a heavy lift to take Magazine around. It's going to be tough. Why are you doing this?
I'm doing this because I think it's time that voters in the state of Rhode Island have a choice. Let me give you it this way. If you do the same thing over and over again and expect different results, we call that insanity. So if you've been voting for Democrats for the past 30 years and you expect different results in Rhode Island, then maybe you should reassess who you're voting for and maybe consider a Republican candidate who may give you an alternative that may be conducive to what you want, like the bridge and the various other issues in Rhode Island.
We got to wrap it up, but if people want to know more about you, where should they go?
Well, they should go to corviforcongress.com,
Yep.
my website there, and I am as transparent as anybody. You can call me. All my information's on there. I love to talk to people, as you can see, and I love to hear what people want, because at the end of the day, they're my boss, not the party. The people of Rhode Island and the United States are the boss.
Well, thanks for coming in for this introductory interview. Good luck.
Thank you.
Ahead. I'm sure we'll see you again.
Excellent.
Thanks.
Thank you.